this is Governor Bobber. I like good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Good Friday evening, everyone. You're watching Dr. Politics and the Political Architect Show. We got the regular doctors here, Dr. Irvine and Dr. Thornton. Welcome. Big week this week. A lot of breaking news. We just had some breaking news a few hours ago. And I think one of the big things is Joe Biden's spending bill went through the House early this morning. I should say mid-morning today. I think it's going to die in the Senate, but yeah. So, how's your week this week, Don, Jeff?
Yeah, went pretty well.
It's been pretty good for me. Just busy at work, but looking forward to Thanksgiving weekend, or the week, I should say.
Yeah, I tell you, I know in Florida schools, as what I've been told, is they're saying how everybody works so hard, so we're just going to give you Monday and Tuesday off, because initially it was just going to be Wednesday. I'm like, oh, that's nice, And they go, we didn't use any of our hurricane days this year, so.
Do you guys remember? Was it the Grease Man? Back in, I forget when it was. It was like when I was in high school, but
yeah, when we were in high school.
He was let go because he made a comment about Martin Luther Day and having an additional 4 days of holidays.
Yes, he said, yes. We're not going to repeat what he said, but we all know what he said.
I just remember that.
God, you remember what he said.
Back then in the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, and then he got back on radio, and then he did something stupid like that again in the 2000s. Yeah,
he's a funny guy, but a little inappropriate at times. But definitely a DC personality for a while.
Yeah, I think he still lives in Potomac. And what do you call? We've got coming up is, I know Don Geronimo, I think, is about to get axed over at WBIG because they're saying his ratings suck. They say Elliot's ratings are tanking on DC 101. So I think we're about to see a big shift in morning radio in DC.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like on one hand, it pays to be controversial, but then if you're too controversial, then you end up in all kinds of trouble. So there's a fine line of being like, edgy but not crossing the edge, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I mean, with Elliot I think it's just Elliot is probably a few years older than we are. He's about like 55 or something like that. And it's kind of like getting to a point where it's like he's getting a little too old to making high school humor or college humor, more like high school level humor.
I don't know. I'm not even sure what millennial humor is nowadays. It's it's stuff on TikTok and stuff, but I don't
they just feel bad. They go around spending. I don't know, Don. A friend of mine sent me a guy named Dar Media or whatever, a YouTuber. Yeah, he does all these little skits and they're always like about gold digger or whatever, and I think that's millennial humor. Frankly, sometimes it's actually pretty good. Some stuff is. It's like it makes you it's like a little bit too PC and woke. But speaking of, so Don, what do we have on the docket for the issue?
Yeah. So we'll get into. Not say as you're talking about these radio hosts, though. When I think about it, I mean, because we can remember a lot of these shock jock types over the years. Is that and they were a different breed then, but today. That's what it is for a large part. But part of the thing is that if you get too politically incorrect and you're not woke enough, you will lose your job. But those guys were kind of the outliers before. But now it doesn't take very long for you to you can tune into almost anything, and it's very much like that. The discourse is very coarse in a lot of ways now. We are very polarized on a lot of fronts as a result of all this, but it's part of what happens. It's like every time I'm reading the news and all this, there's all these attacks on, say, even Tucker Carlson for some things he says, and sometimes Tucker says some pretty wild things, but he brings in the ratings, he brings in the money, and that's kind of the name of the game and all that. If they can attract the viewers, if they can, the advertisers don't flee, then most times the bosses don't really care what they say until somebody makes a big stink about it.
Yeah, I mean, our friend Michael Graham, remember, he got into a little bit of trouble for nothing. I don't think he said anything wrong, frankly. CARE is a terrorist organization. They're unindicted co-conspirators. And they just basically came out and just basically hammered WMAL. They did the same thing to Fred Grandy. And I don't know if Jeff remembers.
We had a guy, Mark Davis, on,
Mark Davis is another one. He's actually a University of Maryland alumni. He was on 980 when 980 was the conservative talker in our area.
Was WMAL?
No, actually, it was WRC 980.
Brian Williams, too, also.
Brian Wilson and Bob
Wilson,
Maddox. Yeah, they were the morning shows. Because I remember them, because in 92, I was actually there. I would call in Mondays after, or I'd call in Wednesdays after like a primary or something like that. We just talk politics. And when I was in Richmond, I did call up the next day to tell them about events of Richmond and stuff like that. But I don't know if you remember, Jeff, you're old enough to remember Paul Harvey when he was actually doing a radio show. And then you had Jackson, what is it, Hardin Weaver on WMAL. They were hilarious, actually. Yes. They had the funniest commercials. They dressed up as the Washington Monument and Capitol Dome. And
I remember what Paul Harvey, what he was like, what his stick was. It's kind of like the other side of the other page or something. I can't remember what it was.
The rest of the story.
The rest of the story.
Yeah. So that was his thing. That
Larry King was pretty big in the DC media market. I mean, he was the overnight guy, and that's where we saw folks like Jim Bohannon, friend of Accuracy Media, I believe, from the old days. Jim Bohannon was the regular fill-in guy for Larry King, which is kind of funny because Larry King is this ultra lefty liberal, and Jim Bohannon is this right-wing guy.
But Larry King was more of like a kind of a promoter though too.
Yeah, he
was like even before like Howard Stern and such. So he was kind of like more just I don't know, issues.
I remember the night of the Rodney King riots. He had PJ O'Rourke, another friend of the conservative movement from the old days, was on there talking about. I guess it was the book After Parliament of Horrors that he did. But Larry goes, PJ, you're not going to say anything insensitive tonight about what's happening in Los Angeles,
What we should do? Since we have like the political architect show, we should invest in like pirate radio and just have like call-ins and just like have like all night with Don or something, just take shifts and the night shift and just have.
We did that election day in 2020 actually. We did that. We went up to 11 o'clock. Like we had Governor Ehrlich and Governor Allen on for a little while. Then we had bunch of people we rotated in and out, and
I know it's not the same as like having a call in.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I think it'd be great.
Ellicott City here, and
Yeah, I'd love to have call in. Actually, I wonder if we I think we might be able to set up a phone number so we would dial in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now, if you can chat with us on social media,
somebody have like call screen and like kind of a little bit.
I'd love to do uncensored calls. Like Larry King never censored his calls. That's why when you call into Larry King, the phone would just keep ringing because there was no phone screener, and they just pick up and go, "Oh, you're next," and they just throw you right into Larry, And I think I got into Larry King's show twice.
Well, Larry still lives on in the sense that he did an infomercial for a product called like Omega XL.
Yes,
and that infomercial is still playing.
Is Larry still alive? I think
the gym. The gym has this problem every once in a while. The people who run it can't always figure out how to get the infomercials off early in the morning. So like half the TVs are carrying infomercials. And I'm looking at this Larry King thing, and it's like, so now it's got the Larry King intro and everything like this, but now they updated it so it has like 1933 to 2021. And I'm like, why are you running this this infomercial with a guy who's dead? Exactly. It seems to be very odd, but they must have invested some decent money in this, and they're figuring you're going to milk this for all
like a trust fund for the infomercial.
Yeah, and Larry's not
buying our product.
Yeah, and Larry King is not a cheap guest to get. I mean, he had an honorarium that was, I think, close to $50,000 to speak at events and stuff like that.
Well,
Pretty funny guy. All right, so let's go back to the news because let's go back to what you started off with, Dwight. You were kind of alluding to the spending program. So we had a couple things that have been happening here since we last were on. One is that Joe Biden signed the infrastructure bill, which had been previously passed, and then this morning the Democrats passed this other spending package. After Kevin McCarthy spent about 8 hours delaying it by jabbering on and on and on and everything like that, just kind of a little bit like what Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and some of those others have done.
Rand Paul did the filibuster.
So it was the House's version of the filibuster, I guess.
Right, the old school filibuster. We actually had to say something.
Just go on there and jawbone and everything like that. I'm sure Nancy Pelosi was fuming trying to get this thing through, but I mean, she has just a bare minimum, majority in there. And I guess one of the Democrats didn't vote for the bill at all. He didn't vote against it, but he just didn't vote.
Was it Abigail Spanberger?
No, it was some other guy I'd never heard of before.
But you know what? The funniest thing was when Kevin McCarthy said we didn't elect Joe Biden to be FDR. You have AOC shouting, "I did." Yeah, that's why, it's like,
and as you said, Dwight, in terms of the Senate, with Manchin and Sinema, they're probably still not likely to get on board with this because, even though it's less money, just kind of like the infrastructure bill was less money than initially proposed, it's still too much money. And this one's more problematic for the Democrats because it's more on social spending. There's like $500 billion for climate change, and there's a bunch of money for cybersecurity and all this kind of stuff, which people are really not sure exactly what benefits that's going to be. And I don't know if you saw, why we talked about these, the EVs, because you want your Hummer, and you're not sure when you're going to get your Hummer and all.
Yeah, I probably won't get heated seats in it though.
But I don't know if you saw that thing where you have the Democrats are trying to push through this tax credit that if you buy from the unionized car manufacturers, you get a much bigger tax credit than if you buy from Tesla or Toyota. It's like, so just
I should get a nice if I ever get my EV Hummer, I should get a nice rebate, I guess, for it then.
Okay, look, and my problem with all this is that we're distorting the market stuff because we're handing out,
I agree,
at taxpayer expense all these tax credits for stuff, and it's without them.
Also, Don, now speaking of EVs, you remember back in the late '90s, early 2000s, you throw .com in front of your name, and you're like, your stock just surges. I think it's happening with EVs right now. You saw GM stock surged when they announced their Hummer. Ford with the Rivian partnership and Rivian, their stocks shot up. You had Volkswagens shoot up when they said, hey, we're committed to EV vehicles. I mean, Mercedes-Benz has the ultimate in S-Class. I think it's the $140,000 for all electric Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Which just means it's going to break down. You're still going to have to pay a prima for repairs on it. But I think that we might be on the cusp of an EV bubble. I mean, a lot of folks think Tesla is overvalued in stock prices. I think
just a little bit.
GM is overvalued. I mean, I'm not an expert or anything like that, but I'm no Larry Kudlow. But I think
so Tesla stock is. The market cap is higher than all of the other auto manufacturers combined and some. Yeah. So the last infographic I saw was that this was when Tesla was valued at 690 some billions as opposed to the trillion and some that they're valued at now. But
at
that point they were still higher than all the traditional market cap, even though their actual manufacturing, the gross profits was 28 billion or something. And the rest of the auto markets was normal stuff, hundreds of billions. But it's what they're selling versus what they're valued at is completely lopsided. Which again, I think that the personality of Elon Musk has a lot to do with it. The EV craze has something to do with it, and then there's the fact that people think that once they get behind something, let's like like the stock, it just tends to be self-reinforcing, like almost like Bitcoin and other kind of things. You invest in it because you think it's going to grow, and so more people invest in it, and then it just kind of gets this natural bubble where it has no intrinsic value; it just has perceived value.
Very true.
Right.
And that's kind of how the .com was in the late '90s and early 2000s. I mean, remember all the there was a .com called thegiver.com where you just they do a handwritten note with your gift that you'd buy from them, and it'd be really fancy. They're gone. I mean, toys.com got started back then. They went under. I mean, we've seen eContributor, the .com I worked at, went under, and I hate to say it, a lot of the .coms that went under deserve to go under.
Like Elf Yourself.
Yes. Because the way I look at it is great. Amazon is the big winner. I mean, they're one of the survivors of the .com bubble. They survived the bubble because remember, Amazon was just selling books back then.
So the Amazon did a smart thing too. Besides diversifying their product set, they actually started selling their infrastructure services. So the whole Amazon Web Services, they were the first cloud service provider because they said, well, we have something that we've built internally. We're going to let other people, benefit from our infrastructure technology. And this is before, Netflix and everyone else was selling their, kind of like their not core, but like their analytics and stuff like that. And so really Amazon was the first step towards the whole cloud as and services model where everyone was saying why build it yourself when somebody else has built it for you, and so use what someone else has constructed and then move your services from in-house to cloud and such. And again, it's so Amazon again, I respects to the company for diversifying. I think they did the right thing. The problem is that, again, to your point, the bubble, it's like you had these companies that nobody knew the technology, so they assumed because some companies struck it big that it's like the lottery. It's like lottery. You spend some money and you get a huge return in some cases, but nothing in other cases. So the investors thought that, well, if we just kind of invest in every little thing a little bit, a lot of these will fail, but some of them will explode and go huge and will make a profit. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. You think about you use the word blockchain or any kind of cryptocurrency or anything like that in the fintech industry. It's like your stock explodes because they think that that's the next biggest thing. So it happens all the time. It's just people don't really understand the underlying technology. It's that perception of Bitcoin struck it big, so Litecoin and Dogecoin and all these other coins are gonna they have some chance.
Hey, I've got $1,000 in Dogecoin.
So again, people don't understand it. They're just like, I want to catch the fever. So it's that fear of missing out, the FOMO.
And actually, if you ask me, I think a lot of people who are jumping into say Bitcoin now, I think they're a little late to the party.
Of course, the Bitcoin.
It's like people that want to buy Tesla stock now.
Altcoins like Litecoin and Ethereum and Ethereum and all these other ones that coming up because it's the same technology, and they're like, well, we're gonna cut and paste just like the .com stuff. We're gonna say here's a method that worked. We're gonna copy it, re-implement it, and we have a chance of making it. Who knows?
Yeah, we know how the .com movie ended.
Right. Well, obviously, the thing with Bitcoin, again, this is all perceived value. There is no backing currency. There is no this currency is backed by gold or silver or anything. It is strictly a perceived value. There is no intrinsic value to it. Which, I mean, again, you can argue that most currencies don't have. They're not tied to a backing of some kind. At one point, we had silver certificate currencies and such that were tied to actual silver and gold reserves in the U.S. Federal deposits or Federal Reserves, but nowadays it's not really tied to that at all.
But I think this is not to be a pessimist because I'm very optimistic. I think a lot of the Bitcoin stuff is very similar to the tulip mania of say the 1600s, and then we know we had the big crash in February 1637 where the tulip market. Basically, the bottom fell out of it when I believe, as the story goes, somebody said, "Oh, that's just a bulb," because people were like selling those bulbs and they were like being traded like a currency, and I think from what I understand, somebody served it up on a sandwich, and that's what, hey, there's only like a root that we can eat, it's like these things, which I think that, cryptocurrency is kind of headed that way. I don't know when it's going to happen. I mean, I think tulips had about a 10-year run before they crashed, and a lot of people who, like, again, a lot of people, like, I got friends where they go, "Oh, should I buy Tesla stock now?" No, you should have bought it when I bought it. It was like about under $100 a share. Don't buy it today. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to your points, guys. I mean, this, so we have Tesla worth 1.1 trillion. As you said, worth more than the other, old line car manufacturers combined. I mean, when Rivian went public, it exploded, also worth more than, at least GM, and things like that.
I mean, GM closed at $61.80 today, and that's actually down from their all-time high was around $67. Actually, that's just today. Never mind. But I mean, this is up from I bought.
So let's say Rivian is worth $113 billion.
Mhm.
That's a lot for a company that hasn't even sold one product,
Yep.
one vehicle yet.
Mhm.
So this is, and that, I mean, that's where I think, some of all this and the Bitcoin thing and any reference back to the .com bubble, you begin to wonder. Now, Elon Musk, has set a new standard in terms of he's been able to take advantage of the tax code. I mean, the government basically says solar industry gets, you buy solar panels, whatever, you get this kind of tax credit. You buy EVs, you get this tax credit. He's living off the back of the taxpayers with his products, but you got to give the guy credit. He's not doing anything illegal. He's actually got vehicles. They actually have solar panels. They have ongoing businesses.
Hey there, he's doing better than Solyndra ever did.
Yeah,
we're not going to see a dime of that money back.
Right, and when you talk about Bitcoin, this is going to be the interesting thing with with crypto. I mean, Bitcoin. I mean, there is some infrastructure in the sense of Coinbase. Places that that are now trying to act as the exchanges for this to try to give it some kind of semblance of this is legitimate type of thing. And when Elon Musk commits Tesla to investing and taking part of their treasury and saying, we're going to invest it in Bitcoin as well as accept Bitcoin to the purchase of a vehicle. And there's one other tech company that's also invested, in Bitcoin, which is kind of a weird, which is like, okay, a lot of companies have stock portfolios, but they're not going to be anywhere near as volatile, as crypto, in my, my opinion, and very, potentially, dangerous for these companies to hold, at least for the short term. But so far so good for them. But I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time getting around the whole crypto thing, and maybe it's part of age and whatnot. But we are seeing. I mean, I know there are conservative organizations out there. If you go to their website, you can donate to them, in Bitcoin, stuff like that. And I just, I would never do that.
Right. The issue, one of the main issues I have with Bitcoin is that a lot of the protections, and you can put it in air quotes if you want to, but the protections of like the stock market are that SEC tries to protect the consumer to a certain degree, like against pump and dump schemes and things where the value is like artificially inflated through.
You mean like AMC?
Yeah, AMC, GameStop. But anyway, there are things that they can't control. But what I'm saying is, in general, they try to put sort of balances in so that you can't like have a celebrity stock go up crazy, and then once they've gotten a certain base, and everyone flushes their stock in it. That was those protections don't exist in crypto, and so we have really more volatility in that market. Again, there is no fundamentals with Bitcoin. And then if you look at Tesla's investment in Bitcoin, I think Tesla is still invested in Bitcoin. I think last I just read, they invested like 1.5 billion in there, which is nothing to them. But regardless, they've both stabilized it and created more volatility because they've legitimized it. I think they've kind of vacillated on whether they accept Bitcoin or not. I think right now they currently don't accept Bitcoin, but I think they're planning to we accept Bitcoin. But regardless, you know how Elon is. If he like tweets about something where he's like thinking about something, that will change the value of stocks dramatically. Just the fact he's thinking about it, which whether or not they're like SEC violations or not, it's still like when you have like one person who could affect the value of anything just by ruminating on what they may think of something, that's never a good sign. You should never have any item, stock or otherwise, that fluctuates in value based upon one person's perception of that, because then you just basically have followers, and if that one person dumps their stock, then it's just the bottom's going to fall out, and that is really the definition of a bubble. So we have these personality bubbles and these stocks where, and I think Tesla and in some case Bitcoin is just overvalued because the personality and the the glam of having stock in something that a famous persona owns. Like if you had Beyonce stock or Beyonce coin or something, like who would invest in it? Because wow, I'm personally invested in this celebrity's future, and that part of me is connected to them. I think there's a desire for that, but it's really not a healthy thing. And I think what it does is it makes it more volatile.
Yeah, but that's why like I've had people ask me, like I'm not a stockbroker or anything like that. I did work for Stratton Oakmont, the Wolves of Wall Street, for about 3 weeks on a bet in college. But people ask me to invest. I say, buy, what you buy. Buy Home Depot, buy Lowe's, buy Exxon Mobil, buy oil stocks. Buy, those are safe stocks. If you're
the blue chip stocks is the traditional term, yes.
Like P&G is really good. Merck. My Merck stock's doing awesome, by the way. People said I should have dumped it. Now it's doing really well. But how do we turn this into a financial show?
We just kind of went down this thing, but there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's kind of an interesting.
No, I mean nothing. Yeah,
but
and and I think transitioning from finances to finances, with we got the reckless spending, like the CBO said it's going to add trillions of dollars.
Well,
over 10 years.
Okay. So when the CBO scored this plan, which the Democrats have been saying, Biden's been saying, this is fully paid for, right? And they come up and they say, no, it's not. They said it's going to add what, $357 billion or something like that dollars to the deficit. So you've got, the Democrats are arguing about that, and they say, no, he says, but because we're going to take in all this money from IRS enforcement of the rich people of these tax cheats. That never works, really. I mean,
of course not.
It never works. And this is the thing. I have a problem with politicians of all stripes when we get into this, because it's really the party in power. When they control the levers like this, then all these budgetary figures do get manipulated for your programs by saying, they do these 10-year plans, which are allowed, but that allows a lot of leeway and a lot of funny stuff to go in there and stuff like that, and so I think the net from the CBO was that they said it was still going to come up, on the income side, like $240 billion short. So and that's something that's exactly what kind of the Joe Manchin position was, is that it's not working for me. He's looking at it. He wants to, if he's going to vote for anything, he wants to have this be a little more fiscally responsible. I think this is where Manchin, he's been kind of a kingmaker now in his position, and he can hold the Democrats hostage in the Senate and say, look, we've got to do better. How true he will stay to this, I do not know, but I like it when a politician will actually stand up and actually try to beat back some of the spending. We don't need this spending, right? I mean, we've talked about this like the last week. We talked about, our inflation is at a 31-year high, both on the core and on the frontline number. We don't need this. My wife was just talking to me tonight. So one of the things she likes to do is make California rolls. So
Mhm.
I mean, so it's rice, it's dried seaweed. She likes to put caviar and then crab sticks in there and stuff like that. And she was telling me in the car today, she said that when she was in Utah, she had me go buy rice, right? And there's a new crop. They have the newer rice is new crop, and it's just the better rice versus the stuff that's been out there a little while longer. And I'm sitting at the store, and I'm like, she says, buy this rice. And I said, okay, well, this rice is like, I don't know, $32 for the
What?
for the 50 bag, and the other one was like 25, which is still higher than it was before. And she was like, whoa, what happened there? It's like that's a lot higher than it should be. But she was saying like, so for the real crab sticks she used to buy, she could get them on sale sometimes for like $7.99 for this pack.
Mhm.
So the price of the stuff is now like up to like $13 or $15 now. You know,
Wow.
So we have the rice going up. We've got that. The caviar. The caviar is up to like $25 from like 10. I mean,
Wow.
soaring prices. And I'm thinking like, I guess we're not going to be making as many these California rolls for other people. Or she says she's going to be looking for cheaper ingredients, which is what a lot of people are doing now. They're looking for substitute ingredients for things because it's like, I can't afford to do this anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of inflation is just just out of this world. Who can
Yeah, just use
afford to do all
tapioca, caviar.
Well, eggs. So my wife likes to do different things with eggs. Sometimes, I mean, and sometimes she just makes, for our missionary friends, she'll make breakfast and they require, she pancakes and she's got this hash brown casserole, but she needs to use 2 or 3 dozen eggs to make it for this group of missionaries that we know.
Yeah.
And, few months ago, you could go to Walmart and buy a dozen large eggs at Walmart for like 80 cents. The last time we went to Germantown to buy those same eggs, it was $1.80.
That's
And you're like,
insane.
okay, it's like this is insane. It's like maybe 80 was too cheap, but $1.80 is too much, and yet it's still cheaper than when we were in U15. And it's just
Is that the
kind of
is that the
we've
price that
we've been so ingrained to relatively stable pricing that this is real sticker shock.
Mhm.
In your breadbasket here. I was looking in the journal today. I was reading an article about people who are on subscription services or some you know same-sex couple up in New York or whatever, and they've got subscriptions to different things, including
Yeah.
pet food, and they're saying like they weren't really paying attention, and the next thing they know, when they look at their credit card, it's like 20% more than it was 3 months ago. And so now they're trying to figure out, okay, we got to get it back to that part of our
Mhm.
budget. So they're trying to find cheaper, foods. For
Yeah,
their
I mean, we all know who Marie Barone is, Ray Romano's television mom. This is her solution for the high price of turkey. It's a tofurkey, and that is her suggestion to beat the 24% increase that 24% higher the price of turkey is this year. So
See, I don't
she
worry about
recommends.
turkey prices because I almost never eat turkey.
There you go.
I
But
do-
the
Turkey
bread,
fried season is one of the cheapest meals and cheapest meats you can get. I'm talking like 80 cents a pound or so, but I'm not sure what it is this year. I've not actually gotten a turkey, but traditionally that's been like one of the cheapest meats
Right.
possible.
it's about $23.99 is what the American Farm Bureau is
I meant like
saying.
per pound. I'm not sure what the I mean the average price of a turkey, but I guess depends upon its poundage. But
I guess what, a 10-pound turkey? I guess, is that an average? I'm not, being a vegetarian, I don't know these things.
usually 15 to 20 pounds is average for a turkey.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably about 10 pounds, let's say. And then bread is up 15% to $3.05. Cranberry sauce is up 11%. It's it's
Part of it is gas. Part of it is
I could never get used to the taste of cranberry sauce.
I never liked cranberries either. I didn't even like Ocean Spray's cranberry juice cocktails either.
I'll drink cranberry juice
I'm not a fan of it.
It's
I'm
the
not a fan
cranberry
of it.
sauce. I can't quite, and I can't take that. For some
See,
reason.
cranberry juice is a little too bitter for me, frankly. It doesn't
So
have.
try Dwight. Try cranberries like white cranberry juice. I think you'll love that because it's an amazing
Is it sweeter?
flavor if you can find it. But the white cranberry juice is not bitter, but it has that cranberry flavor just without the bitterness.
Yeah, I could give that a try. Yeah, but I mean, that's like the inflation is a big thing. I think it's. I hate to say it, inflation. Contrary to what Joy Behar says on The View, people are just buying stuff. That's why things are becoming more expensive.
Well, it's one of those things that separates the rich from the working class because you ask a lot of politicians what the cost of certain commodities are, and they have no clue. They don't
know what the price. They don't know what if you
the
asked,
cost of like milk is or eggs or whatever. They couldn't have this discussion with us.
Yeah.
And then for us, if a 10% or 20% cost of food increases, that goes directly against our ability to spend money. And so it's like we're not making 20% more in our salaries, but we're spending 20% more. 60% more on gas, 20% more on food. Housing prices have just blown up too. So I mean, it really affects the working class, and then the working poor are even worse situation because they spend more of their budget as a percentage on commodities and those kind of things, and so housing costs, food costs, those kind of things. It hits them even harder. So again, it's one of those things that inflation deflates the value of money because now your money, what you made, say $100 a day, used to buy you more. Now it just doesn't buy you as much, so you need more money to buy stuff. Otherwise, it doesn't go as far. So again, I mean, we've all seen the westerns where people had the 5 and 10 stores where you had.
Yeah, it's like McCrory's. I know that.
I
I remember the nickel.
So
See, Jeff, I'm old enough to remember the nickel and dime stores, McCrory's.
Right. Those are literally nickels and dimes that you had to spend, and that's like like when $1 in the old west was like $1,000. It's like it was a big deal. It's like now we look at like you can't buy a a cheeseburger for $1. So yeah,
I mean, what's funny is we think there was an episode of I Love Lucy where she goes to California and buys a Don Lauper original dress for, I want to say it was like $1,000 or Ricky said she could spend $100 and I think she spent like $1,500, something like that. $1,500 in 1950, whenever the the show was made. That is a whole lot of money,
Yeah, that's almost the price of a car.
Yeah, I mean, well, the Pontiac was $2,000 they bought to drive to California.
Yeah,
but,
and Jeff, I mean, you're right. The thing is as someone who has seen my income drop over the last several years, I didn't really worry about it too much. I didn't really worry about inflation too much because it stayed relatively stable. So, and I know that my standard of living was getting eaten away a little bit, but you go from 2% or less inflation to 6% inflation, that begins to hurt. If my income going up, it's actually going down, and I've got inflation pushing the other way, I'm getting squeezed on both ends here. It's like, okay, there's a lot less money floating around here now for me to be able to do things. I first have less money coming in, but now inflation is eating up more of that pie because I still need to put the basics into my fridge and on the table, and it's like, okay, this is just getting to be absolutely insane. And as you said, a lot of these wealthy people, they don't know, they don't do the shopping. And when you were saying this, one of the things that came to mind, you remember the old you remember George Bush going
1992
in the scanner?
And also,
oh my gosh, this is amazing. That's like,
I mean, if you remember back, I mean, if you remember also back then in 1992, and of all the presidential candidates that were running for president, that knew the price, actually not 92, 88, that knew the price of a gallon of milk, it was Steve Forbes. Steve Forbes knew how much a loaf of bread cost, a gallon of milk, dozen eggs, flour, sugar. He knew all that stuff. And that's kind of what, let me admire, I mean, Bill Clinton, he had no idea what the price of milk was, And right now, the average price of milk is $3.59 which is, I mean, that's actually, that's also up like 26%, since 2018. I think price of milk at Safeway right now, a gallon is I think $3.99 or something around. It's around $3.99 a gallon.
It's funny because it seems like milk is always like a forerunner of the price of gas. So it's like, you look at what milk price of milk is. It's like gas will get to that price. So
Yeah,
remember when milk was like
buck
below $3
$1.89
a gallon, and then it went up higher and gas went up higher, and it's obviously we're not paying that much for gas, but I'd be surprised if we don't hit close to $4 a gallon by like early next year.
And by the way, this is winter fuel. Wait till we have to switch to the springtime conversion. Thank you, environmental wackos in California. We're gonna have to pay. That's because that's always a more expensive fuel in this when they do this cutover. So yeah, we'll be. Well, I think I hate to say it, we may be around $5 a gallon sometime in June of next year.
I don't know. You see those things as a little self-correcting when it gets close to $4 because then the price per barrel tends to go down because there is a thing with like OPEC where we get most of our gas from the oil barrels from where it's like if it's a certain threshold, then America tends to reinvest in their own oil production, which then threatens OPEC, and so they kind of try to stay competitive with like what level do they need to do where so we don't really invest in our own oil.
And that's the thing Joe Biden doesn't understand. When you cap off, because you have to cap when they stop drilling, you cap off these oils. It's not like you can unscrew it and just go back and start pulling the oil out. It takes time to get that oil again. It's a whole process, which he doesn't seem to understand, or any Democrat for that matter understands that, you can't.
Well, yeah. What's Biden's response right now to high gas prices? He wants an investigation of the oil companies for on the pricing of this, which no one, there's virtually no one except your ardent liberals and something like that, conspiracy theorists.
I am surprised they're not blaming President George W. Bush and Dick Cheney because they're a couple of oil men. They're
the homeless pricing on like real estate companies. It's like we're going to investigate the homeless problem in San Francisco by investigating all these realtors. There's got to be some conspiracy behind that. It's like no.
Well, actually, I think part of this, like I tell you, there are I know they're keeping I mean the dim-witted liberals. They blame. I mean, let me tell you, if I'm sorry, it's not blaming Donald Trump for the high price of real estate because he's a real estate mogul. It's all Trump's fault, and the price of oil going up is George W. Bush and Dick Cheney's fault because they're making so much money off of this. Never mind that. How much money is the Biden family making off the higher price of oil? His son's a gas man.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the whole
natural gas and gas, but.
Yeah, the whole energy policy in this nation just needs to be corrected.
And actually, there's some stuff
and Jeff, that's what Biden is ignoring. I mean, he talks about maybe there's some kind of price fixing or collusion going on there. It's like, but you're the guy who came into office and decided that we were going to cut off our exploration. You basically said no to this pipeline. No, we're not going to do this and that. He's done more damage to national energy policy, and yet it's like, no, this is, it's like he ignores that and tries to blame the oil companies and others for maybe pushing the price of gas up. It's like, no, look at yourself in the mirror and look at your policies and see what you've done. Look at the spending package that you want to get through, that you want $500 billion for these climate change things, which also is trying to push this country into an unnatural state of getting away from fossil fuels, into something that's still going to be very, very costly. It's so pie in the sky. Kiss up to all the environmentalists and your progressive left wing of the party, but it's at great peril and cost to the country as a whole. Yeah. They're just totally blind and dumb on this.
I mean, first of all, how is a McDonald's employee, I don't care if they're making $20 an hour, how are they going to afford an EV when it's almost like $50,000 or $35,000? They're not going to, or Uber drivers, I think was it California, I think that wants to force all Uber owners to have EVs.
I hadn't heard that.
No, I mean, I think because California is moving towards EVs in the whole state and everything like that, that they're going to try to force California drivers to basically convert by 2050 or something like that. It's
Well,
like,
I did hear that California is doing the Montgomery County thing where they're forbidding the sale of gas-powered lawn vehicles. So anything like lawnmowers or weed whackers, have to be all electric by a certain date. They're not going to sell any more gas-powered.
I go to Prince George's County and buy a gas lawnmower.
Right, but again, it affects not just homeowners, but it
Yeah.
also affects all the landscaping companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way you can mow a McMansion on on a battery. So it's like
I pay roughly about $40 a week to have my lawn cut during the season. That they come out every week. They do that. They do the mulching and they till the garden and do a bunch of other stuff for me as well. What's going to happen is it's going to go up. It's probably going to be now next year might be $60 a week or 80 if I'm lucky, it'll be only 50 to $60 a week. Because I remember when I used to mow lawns when I was in high school for $20. I mean, and that was like a premium, people said. And I don't know, Jeff, if you mowed lawns for other people when you were in high school. I mean, $20 was like going rate, right? Average. That was on the high end of average. Then we had some people that would undercut me and want to cut the grass for $10. And
no, that was the way to earn money in the summer was to mow grass. So you just like bring your lawnmower just onto the street and just like offer mow grass for $20. So.
But you're right. I mean, you guys are right. I mean, in terms of, if people like the landscaping companies, which are not really high profit margin business and things like that. Well, if they've got to pay their workers more to attract them, just so they have a staff to go, to take care of their clients. But then they are going to be eventually forced to buy some kind of, EV, lawnmower. Yeah. I mean, that lawnmower is only going to be able to last so long. So it can only cut a certain amount of property. I mean, at least with the gas powered mower, right? You just keep filling up the tank.
Yeah.
And it can keep going. But it's like, you're going to have to go find a place to go charge your lawnmower in between jobs or something like that. This seems like a disaster.
Yeah, and also here's the other thing.
With all these things. I bought my first ever leaf blower, and I bought a battery powered one, and it's pretty good. But that battery is big and it's heavy.
Is it? Did you buy a Ryobi?
No, I bought a thing called Greenworks because it was on sale on Costco.
Okay.
Yeah, I I love to support electric. It makes sense.
It does a great job of blowing the leaves around, but now with the Costco deal, you always get a little extra something, and they give you a second battery. You need the second battery because without the second battery, I'd get a quarter of my lawn done. That's part of the thing. If I did a gas power deal, I'd do the whole lawn, right? I just make sure.
What would be really great if they would do a cord and battery option. Like I can use the cord, or I can use the battery. That way, I got two outlets, one in the front of the house, one in the back of the house for electricity. I could plug it in. Then where the cord won't reach, I use the battery power to bring the leaves in closer. I think something like that would make more sense, but that just makes way too much sense because that dirty electricity is coming from that coal plant.
Which is also the dirty little secret about the environmentalists. They talk about all this green energy and they want to do all these, but it's you cannot get, and we've said this before many times I think on the show, you cannot get, there's not enough wind and solar power out there generated to go ahead and power all these vehicles you want to do. You're going to need things like coal power, that are fueling electricity plants, especially since you pretty much have banned nuclear power almost everywhere you go. And that's definitely a cheap source of energy.
Right. So the big issue that people don't realize with renewables is that because they're not constant sources of power, you have to supplant them with, first of all, you've got energy losses getting into the grid because where you have the solar farms and the wind farms aren't typically conducive to transmission of power. So you've got additional energy losses that occur in the transmission. Plus, now you have these fluctuations on the grid that have to be made up for by these short-term, short demand generators, which basically a coal gas, coal and natural gas generators that are less efficient because they have to spin up and spin down, and it's like having your car being like in rush hour traffic where you stop and go and stop and go.
Mhm.
Create a lot more pollution than that if you're just going on the expressway at like 65 miles an hour at a constant speed. Even if it's a higher speed, it's constant. So it's like your car can be tuned for that. The nuclear plants, they have very stable outputs. You can't really just spin them up and spin them down, but they're very efficient. And same thing, even you can have efficient coal plants. They're not ever going to be as efficient as other plants, but they can be more efficient if they're tuned for a certain operating parameter. But if they got to spin up and spin down and deal with these constantly changing demands, that's where you lose the efficiencies and stuff. And so you lose more in the end than you really gain from these renewable energies. And everyone likes to think that, well, this is just free energy. We're just using wind and solar. It doesn't cost us anything. There's no harm, but it decreases the national power grid efficiency. Plus, you have all the materials that you require to make the solar panels and the wind generators, the turbines, that include rare earths. And I'm not going to go into the whole kind of thing about rare earths, but there are limitations in that manufacturing process, which, like Don said, we don't have the materials. Even if we had the landscape and just to put solar everywhere, we don't have the materials to fully cover the United States in solar panels. There's just not enough raw material to do that.
And honestly, really, the greenest of green energy is nuclear energy. It's clean, cheap, and reliable.
No, it is. And the thing too is that, again, I won't go on a tangent on this too much, but we're still using nuclear technology from the 60s. There are next gen nuclear options that people could invest in and develop, but we don't go that way because everyone thinks nuclear. They think about
Everyone's afraid of
all
Chernobyl, and
they think about 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl.
see, 3 Mile Island was not even. It's 3 Mile Island. Nothing bad happened during. It was more
People realize that
hysteria.
there's less death, less consequences for all the nuclear accidents, combined than there have been for coal power plant deaths and pollution and all the not even including black lung and everything else that the miners have had to deal with, but just the pollution that's caused from the emissions. Again, but people are just in tune for, like, they think nuclear, they think bomb. And so it's like, you can't even have a discussion with them because they're so ingrained that, like, this is will destroy our future. And
Yeah, they're the people. They're like, nuclear. Oh my God, do you want to have a Hiroshima and by the way, your mom was in Hiroshima, right? Or was it Nagasaki?
Nagasaki.
And she was there when the atomic bomb was dropped, correct? And
Right.
she just passed away a few years ago, right?
She lived till 97. As a matter of fact,
Yep.
today would have been her 102nd birthday.
Oh, there you go. You know what a liberal would say, Don? If we never used the atomic bomb, she'd be alive today.
There are quite a few people that survived that. I mean, a lot of the people that were near the center died, but people that were further out, they were fine. I mean, for my mother to live to 97 plus, I mean, I think that she was proof that it's all bad. I mean, part of the problem with the nuclear, I mean, that one of the things that I think hurt them a lot was just that we had that tsunami whole thing in Japan and Fukushima.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's what really scared a lot of people. Europe, Angela Merkel, decides, well, we have to get away from this. But, the terrain, the situations are very different. Landscape is not Japan's landscape. And so, you're not comparing apples to apples in this case.
Yeah. And then Don, this reminds me
of decisions.
Yeah, this reminds me of, like, the way the hysteria is around nuclear power. People have said, oh, we can't go into the moon after that Apollo launch pad fire of Apollo 13 back in the days. Or people say we can't go back into space after Challenger. And if we stop because of accidents, we'd never progress as a society. We need to go full nuclear. We need a president that actually has the backbone to go and move to nuclear.
And there are safer options now. I mean, we're not using the same technology back that we did in the 60s for our space program, and we don't have to use the same technology for nuclear that we did back in the 60s either. There are safer options. There's walk-away safe reactors that we can design that don't have the intrinsic, fine-tune. If you walk away, you could risk a meltdown kind of problem with our light water reactors we have currently. there are other technologies we can pursue, and other countries are pursuing them. But again, it's one of those things that as a government and as a people.
And the problem is, I think most people, it's the popularity of The Simpsons. They think anyone working in a nuclear power plant is a Homer Simpson. And they go, we wouldn't want Homer Simpson being left in charge of a nuclear power plant. And by the way,
Toxic Avenger, which is filmed in Maryland, and you have even RoboCop with the nuclear waste and discarding. It's popularized. People like to think that toxic waste is like the Joker, like these. If you get toxic waste and you start transforming into this bug-eyed monster. I mean, yes, I mean there are certainly things we need to be cautious of with nuclear power, but the same thing is to be said of like coal and like what do you do with all the coal ash and everything else? That's very toxic too. I mean, you get,
thank God we're doing like open open mining of coal now. In the old days when you took those little cars down into the mine shafts and all that, now I think they're doing open.
Yeah, they're doing that. But the point is that again, coal, you have leftover stuff that's called coal ash that's left when you can burn the coal. What happens when that stuff gets wet? It has all of these toxic elements in there, arsenic and other types of things that just don't burn up that are found naturally.
Arsenic and old lace, that
get in the water supply. And again, this is as deadly as getting irradiated. It will kill you just the same, cause cancer just the same. And again, people don't realize that, again, they're just thought that, well, it's fire. Fire is like, we've had fire since ever, so it can't be that bad. Or they think like, even like geothermal is like, safe. And they don't realize that geothermal actually releases more radiation than any other technology because it's considered naturally occurring radiation because it's like, radon and other types of, radiation. But it's still radiation. I don't care how you classify it. It's actually more dangerous than the radioactive activity you'll get in a, nuclear plant. But people don't think about it because it's not ever marketed as such. So I don't know, it's just different issues, but the point of it is that if we're going to be looking at the future, we need to figure out different technologies and not be so beholden to the way we're doing things right now. We need to think about other options.
And now just kind of making a slight transition. We're talking nuclear power and nuclear explosion. I think the liberal media had a nuclear explosion earlier today with the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict coming down. And my view is this: the system works. And I said the same thing when OJ was found innocent by a jury of his peers. The system works. When Mayor Crackhead was acquitted, we said the system works. He had his day in court,
Marion Barry, you think that was, well?
Yeah, Marion Barry, yeah.
I don't know that. So justice doesn't always.
But I think, look, in Rittenhouse, it was self-defense.
In this case, I think it was,
and
here's something. One side was like unprovoked. And so the narrative was like, here's a guy who basically opened fire on a bunch of protesters who were doing nothing wrong except just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That wasn't the story. These weren't protesters who were just like innocent bystanders. Yeah. These are people who were aggressors. They pointed weapons. They were actually threatening harm. And I think that the truth of that came out in the trial.
I tell you, I really hope he sues Joe Biden. When a presidential candidate calls you a white supremacist, and everything in the book, he should sue Joe Biden. His fraudulency should be hauled into court, frankly. And by the way, and I think justice was served. This is still America. We still respect the rule of law. We're a nation of laws. You agree or disagree. We've got this is the best criminal justice system in the world. Frankly. I found a lot of liberals. I just posted on Facebook earlier this afternoon when the verdict came in saying, I said, the system works. And then I've got these people saying, I hope you're not talking about Kyle. That'd be the last straw. I'm like, why is it that the left can't, they want us to accept the results of an election, which most of us have, most of us have accepted the results of the election of his fraudulency. And there's clear evidence that there was some fraud in some states, I don't think, but these people, they can't accept a jury of his peers. And if you watched any of the trial, the DA was grossly incompetent, frankly. And I wonder if Joe Biden is going to try and do federal civil rights actions against Kyle Rittenhouse,
I don't know. I mean, I understand that whenever there are issues which are charged issues, there's always going to be narrative that's espoused that is going to people get charged up because people are going to feel like this is an unfair verdict
but
because they feel like
okay.
again what they were told
Yeah.
was that again that the narrative that was being espoused was that here are innocent protesters who
They
were.
weren't protesters, they were rioters. The stuff.
I know, but I'm saying this is the narrative is that these were people who were like just at the wrong place at the wrong time. They were doing nothing wrong. They just happened to be, passing by, and then they got
picking up
shot
a
at.
TV set in the
They-
middle of the night, and
But again, that's the narrative. And if
Yeah.
people accept that, what they were doing was harmless, then of course, if you're not doing anything wrong, being shot at it seems like a gross injustice. But if you're saying, well, here's someone who was, defending themselves because somebody was being aggressive towards them, pointing firearms and threatening them with violence, then that changes the story. But of course, people don't think about that. They want to think that, this protest or I agree. I think it was a riot, but this protest was a peaceful demonstration. It was only when people on the other side started to respond to it that things got violent. And these are people who are setting fires. They're causing damage to people and property. This is the same crowd that I think set a cop car on fire and was busting down storefronts and doing and looting stores. That's not a protest. That's not a protest. You didn't see the Million Man March. Burning down or buildings
No.
or busting in windows or things. There's a difference between a protest and a riot. And again, if your narrative is that this was a protest, a peaceful protest where people were just doing their First Amendment right to protest, then of course it's going to sound awful. But if you pull away the curtains and understand that the people involved were not innocent, that they were aggressors, then it changes the story.
Yeah.
So. Anyway,
and it comes down to the whole thing is we have to respect the rule of law in America. And it goes both sides. It goes to our friends on the right, goes to our frenemies on the left. I think do we and I think it's really wrong. This is the knee-jerk reaction. When they don't like an election result, they do the exact same thing. They can't, they can't accept something that doesn't go their way. If, let's say, hypothetically, the jury came back and said, hey, yes, we know Wisconsin has eliminated the death penalty, but we want to bring the death penalty back so we can fry Kyle Rittenhouse. They would have no problem with that. They'd have not one problem with that. Because this is a decision that the left doesn't like, they're all indignant. I mean, MSNBC heads were exploding, when this all came out.
Yeah, that is one thing about this trial, though, where the judge bans MSNBC from covering the trial any further after.
They had a producer that was trying to dox the jurist.
Well, yeah, that's still a little bit, fuzzy. Apparently, this guy, works for, NBC or MSNBC, and he claims that he was told to follow the juror van as a transport of them. He got pulled over for some traffic violation.
I guarantee that he was told I guarantee somebody at MSLSD or at NBC told them, hey, follow them so we'll get their addresses and we could dox them all on the news in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, it looks bad for MSNBC to even get remotely close to having been accused of any nefarious activity when it comes to this type of thing, because it then also feeds into that agenda that we know of where they were going. We knew what the media wanted as the verdict. They didn't get the verdict. We're going to be hearing about this for a long time to come as a result of that. I mean, Rittenhouse is he's no angel. I mean, what is a guy like that doing with a weapon and having lied about being an EMT to begin with over there? That was a situation where I don't think he should have been there to begin with. But did he kill these people with intent? I don't think there's any question that he was, he felt danger and he was doing this in self-defense.
And also, here's the thing.
These people that unfortunately died, they are not innocents. They are not just some innocent bystanders.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Kyle Rittenhouse was a minor when this all happened. He was a kid. The kid that stabbed the other kid at Blair who's being tried as I don't think they've released the name of that kid yet. And this kid actually, and there was malice. He did, intent. There was intent there to do harm. I don't think I've seen them release the kid's name yet, even though heard he's being tried as an adult. Which is crazy. And by the way, just a footnote on that is the justification. They're saying, well, a lot of kids are stressed because of COVID, so that's why they're going around stabbing people.
I know. COVID is being used as an excuse for a lot of things.
Hey, next time I get pulled over for speeding, Don, or if I get traffic here, I was speeding because I thought COVID was chasing me, so I had to outrun the COVID virus.
I haven't driven much because of COVID, so I kind of forgot what all the speed limits and everything were.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things.
Or if there's a long line at the supermarket, hey, I've got COVID, so I'm going to push you out of the way, and I'm going to jump right in front of you. But that.
All right, we're overtime, Dwight. You want to?
Yes, we are. Final thoughts time. That's right. Final thoughts. Let's start with you, Jeff. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have anything in particular. Except as you said, this week has been a crazy week. So, I would say that again, I understand people are, especially about these cases. People have their own opinions about that, and I won't always say that the law is 100% right because laws have been changed. They are very contextual as far as what they're designed to do. But this is not just the law. This is also the jury who, of his peers who believed, the truth of the story. And again, you can't just blame the law in this case because, again, this is why we have jurors. This is because, the juror can say, like, yes, I believe that this was warranted or not warranted, even regardless of what the law says. I mean, there are ways for jurors to object to, so to speak, the law in a certain case. But again, I understand people have certain feelings about this, but I would say that, if you have, concerns about these situations, consider the ramifications of your actions. My boss is fond of saying, you play stupid play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. It's like, if you start to get in a situation where you are in an environment where bad things can happen, whether it is playing, doing a protest / riot, or if you're, doing a game of Russian roulette, or if you're doing anything that's like really not thoughtful, you're risking, life and limb in a lot of these cases. And just realize that, a lot of this can be avoided if we, basically treat each other with respect and dignity. And there are ways to express, our displeasure of certain things without resorting to destruction of people, destruction of property and threatening people in these situations where these things get out of control. And I just, again, without going too much in a rant, even like, the January 6th, incident, I think regardless of how you feel about the situation, I think that was an inappropriate expression of your feelings. So whether or not you believe that there was problems with the election, or that the House and Senate should be held responsible, there are ways to deal with that without, intruding upon, their sessions and destroying or just damaging the building. So again, I would just say that, again, we have a process. We have, this country is based upon certain ideals, that we have the right to protest. We have the right to peacefully assemble. But there are limits to that. We are designed for there to be methods for us to express our thoughts without endangering other people. So I guess I'll just leave it at that, and then wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving next week, because obviously this is a time of in the season of much remembrance. So let's remember those that are dear to us and those that are less fortunate, and try to help those out that aren't as fortunate as we, especially in this age where things are starting to cost more money and people have less to work with. So
Done. All right. Final thoughts.
Yeah, echoing at least Jeff on the happy Thanksgiving. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not a big turkey guy, but we did get invited to our friends over. So it'll be nice to have a Thanksgiving where we can be like we were before the pandemic. Like there'll be some friends of ours, and they have a lot of family that live here in the area. So where we'll be with them, and they'll probably be with
Are the
kids.
kids coming back?
There'll probably be like 30 people there. My kids never come to us. We have to go to them. Okay. It's just the way it is. It drives my wife absolutely crazy. But if we want to see our grandkids, we got to go to Indiana. We want to see our other kids, we got to go to Arizona or Utah. So
Weather's better in Arizona right now.
that's just the way it is. Well, and that feeds into my pet peeve tonight, which once again is the mask mandate. Because if I'm in Arizona, I'm in Utah, I can choose whether or not I want to wear a mask indoors or whatever.
Mhm.
But we're about at 12:01 a.m. tomorrow. We're going back to the indoor mask mandate in Montgomery County, whereas on Monday in D.C. they're lifting their indoor mask mandate of all things. So when I go to the gym tomorrow, I'll be wearing a mask at least when I walk in. I'll take it off when I'm on the elliptical, and the guy there will not bat an eyelash, but I'll use it anywhere else in there. And I know if I go back in the afternoon, they'll be doing that. But I don't look forward to going back and shopping and having to wear the mask. And, it's not effective. It's a psychological thing as far as I'm concerned with these liberal politicians. Look, one thing that gets me is that they're using the CDC figure that between 50 to 99 cases, for 7 days. In this case, in Montgomery County, it results in substantial transmission and therefore requires an indoor mask mandate. And Montgomery County's been at like 52, 53. This is per 100,000 people. How is 50 plus cases per 100,000 people? Why is that substantial? What is wrong with the CDC? Exactly what is the science here that tells us how many people, Montgomery, they're admitting, they're not having a hospitalization problem. They're not seeing like a huge increase in deaths, but no, we got to go back and throw the stinking mask on because there's some arbitrary that has been, forced on us by the government, and then all these people that are saying, oh yeah, I got to go. They're rushing to go, vaccinate their 5-year-old kids and stuff like that. I'm like, you're crazy. It's like your kids don't need this. We're being fed such a bunch of crap right now. It's just really annoying, what we're dealing with. So as my wife said, make you want to move to Utah. I said, not yet, but I'm getting closer.
Yeah, I tell you, in Florida, when I go to Florida, I'm not walking over bodies when I go there. They haven't had a mask mandate. I think it's been gone since all summer.
So let me say this too, because obviously this is a contentious thing, but the reason we initially did the masks was 2 reasons. First one was to slow the curve so that hospitals were not inundated with cases, and also because we didn't have any other effective remedies or ways to deal with it. So I'm at the point. Everyone is sick of wearing masks. I keep one in my pocket just because I never know what the policy is going to be from place to place. But it's like we have the vaccines now. The people who are going to get vaccinated have gotten vaccinated. The people who aren't, are not going to get vaccinated, regardless of what you say. So at this point, do we see a problem where the hospitals can't deal with the cases, where we have too many people with COVID infections to deal with them at the hospitals? I don't know. But at this point, I think that, to your point, Don, that we're at a level now which is like, this is going to be like low level, but this is not going to go away. And at what point do we just say, this is the world we live in. We have to deal with this.
Well, Mark Elric says once you get to 85
right now, we're supposed to be at 85% to get rid of them altogether. We're at 78% for the county. It's like, okay, now my other thing is like, I don't know what it needs to get to that 85% level where move up that 7 percentage points was like, if you haven't been vaccinated in Montgomery County, do me a favor, go get vaccinated, because if we get to 85 and then we don't have to deal with it anymore, I'll be a much happier camper at that point in time.
And I'm about to get the booster myself. So I'm going to be fully
Pfizer or Moderna?
Probably the one where I can get it with just 1 shot. I don't want to do 2 shots.
Johnson.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's a booster for them though.
They're working on it actually.
Yeah, but I'll probably get
booster.
I think
1 shot
the booster.
Booster's 1 shot.
The booster's so okay. So
the booster's only for 1 shot for all of them. So Pfizer and Moderna had a 2-shot initial vaccine, but the booster's only ever been one shot.
Oh, good. So I'll just get whichever one they'll have. I'll take that.
I think it depends upon what your initial one was. So if you had
J&J
Pfizer,
was
you gotta get the
my
Pfizer
initial.
booster. If you had Moderna, you gotta get the Moderna booster. And
No,
I don't think they want you to mix it. They want you to keep the
Right.
same line, right?
Oh,
But
so I
there are
gotta wait for
different
J&J then.
ways that the vaccine works in your system. So
Right.
you got the RNA type delivery, and you got the other. I don't know the differences, but there are differences in how they actually deliver the.
Well, also I think the J&J is actually the better of the vaccine. They're saying it actually lasts longer in your system than the other two. So
I've heard other things. I've heard the JJ was like kind of a little overestimated as far as its effectiveness, but which is why they're doing the vaccine, the booster for that. But regardless, I mean, it's everyone is doing a booster now, so I don't know if they're fully
I
out
know.
yet,
Yeah.
but Pfizer definitely has the booster out. I think Moderna is on its way, and I think Johnson Johnson is looking to get it approved as well. But
yeah, I don't know how Chris got his. Chris told me he got a booster and he got the Johnson & Johnson. And I'm kind of wondering how was he able to get did he just get a Moderna booster and just didn't tell him he had a J&J before?
Supposed to.
Or what?
I think you bring your card to so they know which.
Yeah. But so yeah. I mean, we're all getting sick of the mask mandates. Tom Hucker floated the idea of bringing the mask mandate for height of flu season.
Well, a lot of other culturals, you go to South Korea or you go to other places, and a lot of people wear masks just as a normal thing. They have a cold, they wear a mask just as social nicety, which is fine. I don't have anything against that. There's certainly a mandate there that if you have a cold,
I honestly would wish if people who have colds would stay home and not come into the office. That'd go.
But it's part of it is a social thing too. So I mean, I get it, and the social niceties of and people's rights for certain things differ from state to state. I mean, again, people in the South will fight for their pickup trucks and guns and bass fishing licenses, whereas people in the North will fight for their other rights.
Yes, their tea and crumpets and champagne and caviar brunches.
So I mean, again, everyone has the things that are important to them, but the point of it is that it's you can still be respectful about it. So whether someone chooses to wear a mask or not, you can still be respectful of that choice, regardless of whether they choose to or not. I think we're to the point now where again, I think people have the mindset, and it's at this point, unless there is a medical emergency where we just can't handle the influx of cases in the hospital, let people decide at this point, because there's no medical emergency where if people are sick that we're going to inundate the hospitals with cases. So at this point I'm like we've kind of the battle lines have been drawn. At this point we're not going to change it at all. So that's my personal opinion.
Okay, any other thoughts, Don?
No, I was just saying, I mean, back in mid-October it said the FDA authorized vaccine booster shots by J&J and Moderna. And I think Pfizer was the one that was waiting for their final approval.
Oh, good.
So they've been authorized. I guess they've been manufactured to a certain degree.
That's great news. That is awesome.
That's it. Turned white.
Yeah, and you know what's really awesome news, Don? December 2nd, this guy is coming to Montgomery County, Kensington. His 5th book is out. And we've got the Montgomery County Republican Club is doing a book party for him in Kensington, Maryland. Just go to the link below, montgomerycountyrepublicanclub.com/Bob Ehrlich, capital B, capital E, to buy your tickets. Tickets are going fast, so you want to do that fast. And then when you want to do that, and then you also want to go out and buy a toy, because that Sunday, December 5th, the Montgomery County Republican Club is doing. And in conjunction with the Black Republican Club, the Maryland Republican Jewish Council, the Maryland Federation of Republican Women, and the Maryland Republican Party, we're doing our 10th annual Christmas and Toys for Tots party at the Rockville Sheraton from 1 to 3. Everyone should come. It's a lot of fun. Meet Santa Claus, meet the Marines, meet some of our favorite candidates that are running for governor and comptroller and attorney general and county council. Everybody who's anybody will be there. And my final thoughts, in addition to all those two, my other two thoughts is that I am, again, reiterating my point that bikers should not be on busy roads during rush hour. We shouldn't have bike lanes taking out a car lane. All that does
Bicyclists or motorcyclists?
bicyclists.
Okay.
Bicyclists. Motorcycles can go the speed limit. So, I've yet to meet the biker that can go, the 35 miles an hour.
Oh, speed limit, yeah, it could be 25 miles an hour.
Yeah. But, on Old Georgetown Road, they took out an entire car lane between the Beltway and downtown Bethesda. It's like, what are you thinking? They did the same thing, I think, in Wheaton. They took out our entire car lane on University. Those roads were already over capacity, and now they took out an entire car. It is, and these buffoons in Rockville want to do the same thing on Rockville Pike, take out a lane. Yeah, that's going to create a bottleneck. I mean, but Rockville Pike, I don't know, Don, if you've ever been there during
355.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know if you've ever been there like at lunchtime. It's like takes forever to get from, say, Congressional Plaza to Old Georgetown Road. It sometimes can take you almost an hour. And I take the back roads, and I'm not going to tell people what the back roads are because then everyone else will start using them. But I think, bike lanes are stupid. Bikers, we've got some beautiful bike paths. Why don't you use those bike paths? As a runner, I don't mind sharing the bike path with you guys, Just don't try and run us over like some of you have the tendency of doing. But all in all, that's the long and short of it is if bikers, they're the most inconsiderate people. They don't follow stop signs. They don't follow red lights. They'll blow through red lights and stop signs. And just, I really hate to say this, but I'm almost thinking bikers should actually have to take a driver's test. If they're going to be riding on the road with other motor vehicles, maybe they should take a driver's test.
I thought
but
that was at one point. You didn't know the handset was like,
Yeah.
this and this to stop.
Yeah. But actually, I got shoulder issues. I don't even know if I could even do that.
Yeah,
But
left turn, stop.
yeah, and so everyone, happy Thanksgiving. Start your Christmas shopping. Don't do what I do, procrastinate till a week before Christmas because you won't have anything there. It'll start to look like a Soviet supermarket from the 1980s. So with that, good night. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
See you.
Bye.